Hi everyone, welcome to the last day of Ignite. I hope you're having a fantastic time. I was kind of concerned about how many people I'd get into my session, given that it's the morning after the party. I feel bad for the people who did the 8 o'clock session. I've done that time slot a few times, and people just go, oh, if anyone will still be awake, it'll be Rob. This time I've got the 10:15, so it's not too bad. I'm going to be talking about, I need to change the slide. I hadn't realized it had gone back to that one. I need to put it into mouse mode, into presenter mode for a minute. I'm going to talk about live query statistics, which is, oh my goodness, ever so useful a thing. And I figure that I can demonstrate it in about 2 minutes flat, okay? So what I'll do is we'll demonstrate, I'll show you live query stats. You'll go, oh, now that's neat. You'll all clap and whoop and all that kind of stuff to really annoy Victor next door. Right? I stuck my head in before to wish him luck, and he said, oh, you just don't be too loud. I was just like, yeah, I know, that's fine, whatever. But what I really want to be showing you is how LQS can actually impact your tuning experiences. Because at the end of the day, the fact that this stuff's there is useful, but it's not enough just to know that it's there. You want to know how you can use it, the kinds of things that you can learn, and actually the kinds of things that you as data professionals, I'm making a huge assumption here, that those of you who are data professionals can teach the developers who need to be writing better queries, right? Who's a developer? Yeah, okay. So you all write queries, right? And you want to know how those queries run, which is fantastic. When I teach people to write T-SQL code, as I do, I don't tend to run many public courses these days. I do a lot of private courses. When I teach people to write T-SQL, my perspective is, I assume that you're wanting to write a query because you are probably some sort of developer or you're interested in data or something like that. And I don't like to teach people the way that they've learnt. When you learn to write queries, you get taught, yeah, data lives in tables, and you say select star from that table, and then you start to learn about the where clause, and then really complicated, you learn about group by and the error messages that you get when you have, things that are not included in an aggregate function and all those kinds of things, right? And that's great for being able to write logically correct queries. But for me, it's not what developers, you lot, actually want. What you want is to know what's actually going on behind the scenes. Because when I was at uni and doing like algorithms and data structures as a subject, before I had any concept of what SQL even stood for, yeah, like that matters. The fact that you pronounce SQL as SQL or anything like that. When I was at uni, I wasn't even interested in the database subject. That wasn't for me. I just saw that as a, easy marks. I was interested in, interesting things. And to me, data wasn't actually interesting. But in first year, I had done algorithms and data structures, and we had learnt things like linked lists and arrays and how you do sorting and all these different things, right, that developers, or you lot, also learnt, right? And when you want to have data within your application, I'm not talking about the database, when you say, I need to have a list of things, or I need to have a collection of things, I need to have an array, you think to yourself, what kind of data structure do I want for this, right? And the reason, I think, part of the reason, why developers have this, I was going to say love-hate, but it's not even that, have this hate relationship with SQL, is because you write T-SQL and you describe a set, right? But what you want to do is write code to be able to fetch the data the way that you want to fetch it. Right? So I teach from the perspective not of tables, but of indexes. And I teach from the perspective of you write this query, and that turns that into a plan, and you can see what's going on with this plan as to how it gets the data out. I teach things like, so therefore the significance of whether you put a filter in the on clause or the where clause or the having clause, whether you use a subquery or not, and all these kinds of things, are all in context of what's the impact on the plan. Now, LQS, live query statistics, is not actually about statistics at all. It's about plans. So I can show you this really quickly, but then I want to be able to move on to show inner workings of your queries and be able to say, so here's some things that you need to be understanding that you can see better with LQS so that you can become a better developer, or if you're the data professional, so that you can teach your developers to write better queries so that you can get better performing SQL instances. I want you to like SQL. I don't want you to just see SQL as this horrible thing that you'd prefer to go for a no SQL environment, right? Because, you know, that's what developers are like, right? You go, do we get to do no SQL? Fantastic! that sounds really appealing to a lot of developers. Me, as a data professional, I know a lot of data professionals who just go, so is SQL dead? And I go, no, it's really not. We just need developers to be better, more educated. We as data professionals have a duty to make sure that you as developers have what you need to be able to write queries that you're happier with, right? So that you like SQL, so that you consider SQL to be performing appropriately well, and so on. The important bits of these are this bit and this bit. Apologies to anyone who's listening on the recording. I just point at the bottom two lines. When I point at something, I always feel like when I've got a recording, I need to get signs with jokes written on them. So I say something that's slightly awkward, and I put up a sign with a joke on it, and then everybody laughs. And the people on the recording just go, I must have missed something. It wasn't that funny. And I figure that way I'm more likely to get asked back. Because, oh, here's a tip. Don't actually move your machine at all when it's got a display plugged into it. I just kind of thought, when I type on it, I kind of want to be a bit further this way. As we go, please ask questions, okay? I figure that if I have explained something badly, then you've got a question, and it's probably not just you, all right? There's probably other people in the room who have that same question. So please ask. Remember, there's no such thing as stupid questions, only stupid people, okay? And my token stupid person for the room today is Russ. Everybody, Russ wrote Perfmon. Oh my goodness. You know, that thing that you use every day. But he's a bit slow, because, you know, Perfmon has a performance impact. So, most monitoring has an impact. No, so he's a lovely guy, but he's my token stupid person for the day. A few weeks ago at the PASS Summit, my stupid person for the day was Kaylin Delaney. You know, she writes all the books about...
I'm in good company.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think of a question that you need to ask and you're worried that it's a stupid question, right? Ask because Russ probably wants to know, right? So you can say, well, just in case Russ misunderstood something, what do you mean by that, right? That works just fine, okay? And then I can make sure that Russ understands it, right? And he will appreciate your having asked the question, okay? So even if you're worried that your question is a stupid question, please still ask it for Russ's sake. Just don't put on the feedback on the evals. A few years ago when I did this, and the guy up the front's name was Dan, and somebody wrote in the anonymous feedback for the conference, why was only Dan allowed to ask questions? And it's anonymous. I don't know how to respond to that. I want to be able to write back, no, you misunderstood. Were you not there at the start when... Anyway, please ask questions. Let me show you what LQS is. See, this is my standard environment, right? Who's heard me present before? Wow, only you, Russ. Seriously. Okay, and someone else, a couple of other people. Terrific. Oh, yeah, a few people. Now you're admitting it. You're just worried that I'll pick on you. Normally, I don't do slides at all. Normally, I just write queries, say, here's what's happening, and we go from there, okay? Here I have Management Studio. It's Management Studio 2016, and it comes with a magic button. Hang on, I've just got to go zoom it, but I'm trying to work out, because my mouse is in presenter mode. There's a button which you can barely see up here that says include live query statistics. Can you see that? If I zoom in a bit more, it's the one that's currently grayed out because my window is currently not connected. I'm gonna connect quickly. Connection, connect. Come on, there we go. AdventureWorks, it's AdventureWorks 2012, just because it hasn't changed enough recently, and I hate it when they introduce some little tiny thing in there. For years, I just used to use the old 2005 version because I could do hierarchies better. Because was it 2008 introduced the hierarchy ID field, and then you couldn't do recursive CTEs using AdventureWorks nearly so easily. Anyway, if I want to be able to look at sales order detail, SOD, I don't know, whatever. And I want to look at the products, P on P dot product ID equals the product ID from that table. I get a query, right? And I can run that query, and I don't care about the results here. I care enough to actually run the query. But really what I'm interested in is the plan. Now, if I click the button up here, which is next to the include live query stats, the one that says include actual execution plan, you're used to this. You do this all the time, right? Yeah? You do this all the time. Who's never done this before? Fantastic. Please tell me, because I can do a quick thing of this is, all right, if I ask a question and nobody responds, but you wish that, you know, it's only because you're being shy, then please still respond. I won't pick on you too much. So I just ran that with that include actual execution plan, and I can see I've got an execution plan here. Fantastic. I can see that my select query calls a hash match. That hash match sucks data in from a clustered index scan of the product table and joins that with sucking data out of the sales order detail table. There's a couple of compute scalars in there just because that table happens to have some computed columns that it needs to work out. All right? But we can see the execution plan here. We can see how the query ran. This is the code for the plan. This is the compiled version of my query. As a developer, this is what you're writing. Okay? You create this by writing a query that the query optimizer will use to create this. But it's the plan that's important. Okay? If I had turned on this option, okay, the include live query statistics button here, okay? Watch what happens. Did you see that? Let me zoom in using Control 4, which is zoom it and keep it live. I'm going to run that again. Isn't that neat? You see, like that's showing you the plan as it's running. You don't even need to wait for the thing to finish. That's the plan. Bear in mind, this is not I want to run it in debug mode. Oh my goodness, that's painful. Right? That's a scary thing. That like puts breakpoints inside SQL Server.exe. Right? If you ever want to bring down a production box, then accidentally hit the really useful looking button. Accidentally hit the really useful little green arrow that's just up here, that looks like the thing that you want to run but isn't. This, no, not that one, I've done Control 4, now I want Control E. This is just saying my plan looks like this, and I can see it's been running this one for 4.69 seconds. It's now finished, so it has 100%. This shows me lots of really useful information. We're going to talk about how this happens behind the scenes. We're going to talk about the kinds of things that we can learn from this, and already you may have seen some things that made you go, about that query alone, right? And we're going to see what's going on. Now, I do want to show you one quick thing. If I move down here, have a look at, stop. I'm trying to, can you see this? Can you see this? Live query statistics is a SQL 2016 feature, but I don't have SQL 2016 installed. I have SQL 2014 SP1, and it works. I need Management Studio 2016 to be able to show it. But actually, live query statistics, the inner workings of live query statistics, I just hate the name. Not just because statistics is hard to say, but just because I go, it's nothing to do with statistics. It's live query plans. That's what's useful. I'll show you in a minute why it's called statistics, but SP1 of 2014. Who's running SP1 of 2014 already? Look at that. Or at least in development on your own machine, right? Because I get that if you might not actually have the ability to do it in production yet. But there was a decent crowd of you. I bet that none of you are on 2016 yet. But that doesn't mean that this feature is not available to you right away. Just don't do it on production. I'll show you how it works. Control 4 to be able to get off that. Now, this query took about 4 seconds to run, right? If I turn off the live query stats bit, it's a lot quicker. Okay? Look, so much quicker. It says 3 instead of 4. Yeah, no, there is an overhead with this. Okay? Let me show you what's going on. We have a new DMV called DM sys exec query profiles. Okay? 2014. It only appeared in SP1 though. We actually have a row in there. We have a row in there because I've got that option turned on. Now I don't have a row in there. It's empty, this DMV. It's empty unless we are running a query with the appropriate set statistics option turned on. You know set statistics. You do set statistics IO on, and you do set statistics time on, right? And you do show plan XML, yeah? There's a new one called profile. If I say set statistics profile on, and then run a query, bear in mind, I don't have that option turned on. I'm just getting the results out, okay? But what I want to be able to do, see, and now it's said, it's given me that as well because that's the show plan in text form that comes through when you actually do a request with profiles. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to make a new window with that going on. I'm going to run this and quickly switch to here and run that. And look, we can see what's happening with our query. Okay? The compute scalars don't come through because a compute scalar doesn't actually affect rows and so on. It just does a bit of, functions is a bit different. But your typical compute scalars aren't considered operator worthy for that. That's why you actually don't see, if you ever look at an execution plan, you don't see the actual number of rows coming out of a compute scalar because it's the same as the previous one. It's just a wrapper. And in fact, that compute scalar probably isn't even running. It's probably running further to the left or further to the right within your plan. It's an interesting placeholder. That's just one of those things about compute scalar that most people don't really think about. It's different if it has to actually call a function. But have a look. At that moment that I queried it, and bear in mind if I ran it again, it would be empty again, right? I'm going to show you some of the columns that we've got here. We've got the session ID, fantastic. We've got the SQL handle, the plan handle, so we can actually query them against the plan cache. I've just been presenting in the US. I've learned to say cache over the past few weeks. I'm back in Australia. I've got to learn to see cache again. I have to say cache, because when I say cash to Australians, they just think of money. And when you have a warm cache, it probably means you've just taken coins out of your pocket. Right. I know. It's just, yeah. Everywhere else in the world, apart from New Zealand, they say cash. They say cache as well, but everywhere else they say cache. And yeah. We see the operator, and we see a node ID. Now these get numbered across the top and then down each branch and so on. You can figure out which ones they are. We see a thread. If it goes parallel, we'll see multiple ones in there. Task address, sure. I'll just zoom in again and show you some more what's going on here. We see the row count. This is incredibly significant, as I'll show you why in a few minutes. Rewinds and rebinds, end of scan, to be able to indicate that actually we've finished that particular scan. How many rows we estimated to get out of the thing. And then a whole bunch of stats about how the thing is running, okay? How much time has it taken, when did it close, and so on. How much CPU time has it taken. And a bunch of information about the object itself, if it's relevant to have the index ID because we're scanning or seeking or whatever, how many reads there have been, and so on. How useful is this? Oh my goodness, it's tremendously handy. Right? And finally, a segment skip count. But you see, if I were to query a production box, it would be empty. Right? Back here again, if I turn this on, Russ, you've got a question, and it's really you with a question.
Oh, it's the guy behind me wanting to
Yeah. It's a woman.
What do you mean?
He didn't mean any offense. Can't you tell she's a woman? She's lovely. Oh my goodness. So, a friend of mine did the best insult once. The best insult I've ever heard was an accidental one. It's probably not the best. No, the best insult I've ever heard was the New Zealand Prime Minister who said when somebody moves from New Zealand to Australia, it raises the average IQ of both countries. That's just brilliant. It takes a moment to think about, and it was a New Zealand Prime Minister who said that. That's brilliant. But the best insult that I've heard during a presentation was someone said, "Oh, we've got a question." "Yes, sir." "Oh, sorry, ma'am." And I'm just like, oh. Yeah, no, it's a woman behind you, Russ. But sorry, what was her question?
What do you mean it would be blank on a production box?
Because you're never going to turn on set stats profile. Let me show you what's going on with this. When I say include live query statistics and I run this, what's happening is that it's running the query with the profile data becoming available, right? And then Management Studio is polling that DMV to be able to say, grab this for me, grab this for me, grab this for me, right? That's intensive. I showed you before that without that on, it ran quite a bit quicker. This is something that if you actually go, hey, you know what, let's turn on set stats profile for most connections, that's going to cause you pain. It just will, right? It's worse than having no count on, right? Most people say set no count on as a way of just avoiding getting that extra message that says, one row affected. coming back, and then they find that they go to like a PDW environment where no count's not supported and they just get errors. But profile is worse. You don't capture every plan that comes out through extended events or previously, profiler traces, because you know that's a bad thing to do. Can I just point like this quickly for the photo? so, so, I know. Thank you. So don't turn this on as a default thing because it is relatively intensive, right? Mind you, it's a DMV. It only really picks that information up when you poll it, but be wary of that. Yes, but I would still say, his question was, could you do this on an ad hoc query without wrecking production? Yes, by all means, but consider it to be an order of magnitude worse than requesting an actual execution plan on production, right? My take for this is that this teaches you how to explore what's going on when a query runs, right? On production, you query the DMVs to be able to get the plan out of the plan cache, right? You query sys.dm exec cached plans or plan cache or whatever, that thing. How is it that I can never... I type it, I use IntelliSense, and it comes up with the thing. It's information that I don't bother trying to remember. I do the cross-apply into to get the plan out passing and the plan handle. And I can see, yep, that's the plan that it used. Fantastic. Have you seen the stuff that's coming in SQL 2016 around the query data store? Tremendously useful stuff, except that I think all that's going to happen is that everybody's going to be fixing plans all the time to stop a bad plan from appearing. And the consultants like me will go into query tune for people, or to fix people's systems that are running slowly. And the first thing that we'll do is get rid of all the fixed plans to let the system go, oh, actually, some of those plans aren't so ideal anymore. But your research into how a query runs, for the most part, I would say do it on your test environment. Get the plan from production, make sure that it's the same as what you're seeing. If they are, learn about how the query is running based on what you see on test, okay? So it polls, which is not that one, that one. It polls to be able to get this information out, right? Query from Calvin. You've got a question. That's good. That's a good reason to put your hand up.
Database administrator.
You're a DBA?
DBA.
Fantastic.
How can you benefit
How can you benefit from this? So his question is, how can a DBA benefit from live query statistics? As far as production systems go, treat it similar to the way that you would see a query plan. So if I run a query, with, where's my cursor gone? Mouse mode, there we go. If I have just give me the plan once I'm finished option, right? This is tremendously useful, right? You use this already. Calvin, yeah? You use this to be able to say, yep, I can see what's going on, and you look at the properties of the operators, and please learn to look at the properties of the operators. It's really important to know whether ordered equals true is set and various things like that. But what you do as a DBA is to be able to say, yeah, developers need to fix this query, or we need to put a new index on because this query is bad, right? Now, I know that you, Calvin, as a DBA, totally get how this runs, right? You know that you start reading a plan, where? Where do you start reading a query plan? Sorry? On the right? No! No, you read a plan from the left. All the books say start from the right, but they're wrong. I'm working on them. I was talking to Grant Fritchie during the week, and on Wednesday, I was still in Adelaide on Wednesday, and Grant Fritchie, who's written a lot of books on execution plans, he works for Redgate Software. He's a long-term SQL MVP. And we have this thing where I say he's wrong. It's all good-natured. I told him that I was going to try to stop mentioning him in talks when I asked this question and find that people are misinformed. You start reading on the left here. Your application calls the query engine to be able to say, I want the results of this query. The query optimizer compiles that and says, okay, great. This is the thing, this is the operator which is going to give you your results back. Right? You can imagine the first part of this query being over here on the left, right, as your application. Your application comes up with a request using 88.net or whatever and says, hey, give me data. This says, hey, hash match, give me a row. Well, first, initialize yourself, then give me a row. And the hash match operator says, okay, I need data from two places. First of all, I need data about each product, and I'm going to build a hash table. Okay? That's what it does. Once it's built that hash table, it then says, right, that's done. Start now giving me the rows from sales order detail, and I need to also hash the values that come out of that and see what hash table buckets they fall into so that I can work out where the joins are, right? Now, as far as the data is concerned, yeah, the data starts at this end, but it's being called in context. In fact, let me show you something. If I say select top 50 star, for example, and I look at the plan for this, do you notice how much thinner the arrows are? And in fact, it's changed the whole thing. It starts by saying, I want 50 rows, right? It's now decided to do a nested loop. That says, give me a row from here, one row, and then with that one row, I'm going to come down here to be able to find something that joins to it. Okay? And it keeps doing that until it's done 50. Right? If you start here, you're going to be wanting to give up 121,000 rows. But that's not going on. This is giving up 50 rows because it's called in context of the top operator. Right? By all means, move quickly to the right, but understand that it's all in context. The context of this is we've got a select rather than an update or whatever else. Well, in fact, we've got an application that's calling something. And then we've got a top, a nested loop, and so on. If I make this a large number, I'm curious about this. See, that's enough for it to flip back to the other one. If I say 1,000, I'm just looking at the estimated plans here. I'm just wondering at what point. There it flicks back. Okay. See, but the problem is the fact that if I do this with live query stats, if I do LQS on this, it's all a bit quick. I'll come back to that in a minute. Because you all know, don't you, that the queries that you need to tune are not actually the long-running queries, are they? Right? They're the queries that you run most often that you need to tune, right? If you've got a query that takes 8 milliseconds that you run 100 times a second, well, sure, the impact of that across the day is going to be way more than that query that takes 8 minutes, but you only run it at midnight every day, one time each day, right? It's very nice to be able to say, hey, I've just taken this query, it takes 8 minutes, I've just tuned it, and now it takes 9 seconds. All hail the database performance tuning DBA guy, Calvin, sat here at the front. Take a bow, Calvin. No, don't. Right? We all like to talk about those scenarios, right? My personal favorite is one that was taking about 5 minutes to run. It was taking a lot of reads, and I got that down to 0 reads absolutely 0 reads. I kind of figured that's ultimate query tuning. It was looking for a particular edge case. So I made a filtered index for the edge case. And then my query just went, oh, there's nothing in the index, nothing to do. Sorry, nothing to do. It was that quick every time. Unless the edge case was found once every few days. And then it went, oh, this time I'll take like 3 seconds, but I don't need to find that edge case because it's either in the list or it's not. Filtered indexes, oh my goodness, use filtered indexes for those edge case scenarios because it tunes things incredibly. But this was a query they were on to run often, right? They couldn't actually, they considered it bad, not constraint worthy, but they considered it urgent if they found something in its edge case. And so they were running it every few seconds, but it was taking a lot longer than that to actually return the data. Amazing stuff. The way this query runs, it pulls one row in from here, does a nested loop, and then pulls this through. Whereas when we didn't have the top, on this one where we could actually see the impact running, look at this. If I've just done a control 1, right? It freezes it for a moment using zoom it. But look, it's finished my scan of product. And quite quickly too, right? Hasn't taken a large amount of time. And yet all this stuff is still going. We're only a third of the way through. But that hash match is spitting out rows already. Notice that, it's spitting out, it's already spitting out rows. We can see here that this is because of the inner workings of that operator, that hash match operator, because it sucks the data in from that product table and creates a hash table. After it's finished that, when it's consumed all of the rows out of the product table, then it can say, right, now start giving me rows from sales order detail. Right? If I had a lot of product, how long is it going to take for my application to start to actually get some data? Because bear in mind, that select up there, 35%. That means that my application at this point will have seen 35% of the data that's coming through. Estimate, right? This is all based on estimates. It might not actually be 35%. Okay? If the estimates are wrong, it could be higher or lower, really. In fact, if it gets to the point where it's seen more rows than it has estimate, it'll sit on 99%. It's like the status bar. It doesn't want to go to 100%, which says it's finished. It'll stop at 99 and go, oh, I wasn't expecting to see this many rows come through. Seriously. Finally, 100, right, okay. But understand, my nested loop, I can't stop it really. I can't, one row, it'll go back and get the next one and spit that out straight away. No blocking operators there. Hash match is kind of half blocking. It's got to build the hash table first, and then it's not blocking when it's pulling the inner side through. All right? If you're pulling a large amount of data out, this is very significant for your application. Right? Who uses integration services? Yeah, a few of you. You know how you hit run on it and you sit there and it doesn't go yellow very quickly, right? I still talk about it going yellow. I know that's what I know. The icon changes. You know what I mean by going yellow. This is the old 2005 days. But you'd hit run and you just kind of have to wait. Yeah, potentially. Who said go and get a coffee? Someone this way. Yeah, exactly. You go get a coffee, right? Now, I like coffee. But I know that it's not an excuse. I don't write bad queries just so I can get coffee. Right? The worst thing you can do is get in the habit of, in fact, the most dangerous key combination for a database person is Alt-Tab, right? Because you run some query and you go, oh yeah, Alt-Tab, I'll do something else for a minute. Go and get a coffee, right? If you actually do go and get a coffee, that's even worse. Because you say begin tran and you run your query and you go, oh, that's taking a bit. I wonder what the score is. Oh, look, they've just lost another wicket, or whatever the case may be, right? if it's the test match last weekend. Oh my goodness, that just was there were no wickets went on that one, were there? But if you start a transaction and then you alt tab, you've got a problem, haven't you? You want to. So yeah. With integration services, your query starts running and you don't actually see anything appearing. It doesn't even go yellow because it doesn't have any results yet. It's just running that query in the data source until that first row comes through. And then it goes, hey, I've got data coming through. I'm going to go yellow. And you go, oh, that's good. You know, there's a brief sigh of relief and you start seeing the numbers go through, right? Now your query, the query optimizer designs your query to finish as quickly as possible, right? It doesn't actually do it to start as quickly as possible. And there's a subtle difference here, right? The subtle difference is, where is your bottleneck? At this point, if I'm waiting for the first 10,000 rows to appear, I might have got them already, right? At this point. He didn't have the monkey with him so he didn't get bored to be able to fire the monkey. I don't know where the monkey is. But anyway, it's on the floor. Oh my goodness. All the people who arrived late are just going, monkey on the floor? What the? No, someone left because they were bored. You've got to think where your bottleneck is. Your query is designed to finish as quickly as possible. It's not designed to go, yeah, but if I take like 10% longer to actually finish, but then I can get the first 10,000 rows out quicker for that buffer for integration services, then the integration services application can start to do something with this data, right? You as developers probably care just as much about when you start to see the data appear as to when you finish getting it, depending on what you're doing with the data. Do you say, give me a row, give me a row, give me a row, or do you consume the whole set? And then once you've got the whole set, start dealing with it. These are developer issues. They're not DBA issues, they're developer issues. Right? But it's the DBA who can come up with this type of stuff and be able to say, let's have a look to see if you've got blocking operators in here that are going to have an impact. So,
well, just on that, does the dotted line mean it's delivering records?
Yeah, well, no, the dotted line means it's running, but it actually just means it hasn't finished yet. When a plan operator gets called, it gets an init function to be able to say, hey, wake up, I'm going to need some rows. And then it starts saying, give me a row, give me a row, give me a row, get row, get row, get row. If you've got clustered column store, if you've got column store at all, you can say get batch, and it will say, give me 1,000 rows. That's a neat thing. I'm not going to look at that today, but oh my goodness, explore that. If you've never considered it, try making a column store table with a single row in it, and joining that to your query and seeing how the plan changes. You might see that it falls into batch mode and starts saying, give me 1,000 rows instead of give me a row. And that can impact your query quite a bit. Column store isn't really designed for one row scenarios. It's designed for things that are going to compress massively and give huge performance increase. But even on ordinary queries, you'd be surprised at the impact of batch mode plans. You had a question, Paul?
Yeah, just similar to the question Ross asked.
Yep.
With the completed line, so that the thickness of the line indicates
Yep.
how data comes through. Can you get any information out of the dotted line? Does it have any properties? Does it have any indicators to tell us that there's how much data is going through?
No, and in fact, it doesn't even last that long. So Paul's question is, can you get information out of these dotted lines? No, not really, because they're only estimates at this point. You don't actually know how long they're going to go for. The more interesting information, I want to run again. I'm just trying to run this over and over so that I can keep talking about it. That's not really what I wanted. There we go. So the more useful information is actually things like this, 73% done, and the fact that this says that it has finished quite quickly, whereas this is still going. That number actually is how long has it been since it was initialized, okay? And the percent there is based on what was our estimated number of rows, okay? and how many of our actual rows have we consumed yet? That divided by that, no, it's not, is it? Look, it's not actually the 73%. It's related to that though. There's some other factors involved. Oh, you know what it is? I made that appear, and then I let time go by. It was because, yeah, at that moment it would have said, see, that 58% is not this one. That's the estimated cost of the whole lot. This doesn't actually show the equivalent of the 73%, but that would be whatever that ratio is. But yeah, so the dotted lines don't get thicker or anything like that. They just stay with dotted lines. And in fact, it doesn't even necessarily mean that there is data going through it. Let me show you something, in fact. I have a massive table. It's annoyingly large. It's got like 19 million rows in it. If I say select star from person.address big, okay, there's a lot of rows in this, frustratingly. I'm going to say select count star. I'm going to say select count big. There's a subtle difference between the two. If I show you the estimated plan for this, this has this is saying stream aggregate. If I show you for just count star, you'll notice that we have an extra thing in there, which is compute scalar. Okay, because count star requests the integer version. But when it does a count behind this in the plan, it produces the big int and it needs to convert it. If you say count big, then actually you ask for the thing that it's using to count. So if I run this, can you, if I do that again, I just paused it about there. Can you see we're pulling the data through? This is 79% of the way through. I've got dotted arrows that we saw moving. It's just that I told it to grab a screenshot of it. But this has not produced any rows yet at all. Okay? Stream aggregate is not actually a blocking operator, except that it kind of is in the fact that it's got to finish the group that it's looking at before it can say how many have come through. A hash match aggregate is like where you count a group of like unsorted, a pack of cards which is sorted by suit. You say count by suit. Use a stream aggregate. It goes through and it says, oh yeah, club, 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 heart. Oh, okay, I had 13 clubs, and it will then output that row to the thing that called it, right? If it's not a sorted pack, it goes, oh, a club, oh, a heart. Another club. Oh, a diamond. Right? And it applies the hash function to be able to figure out where do I get these. And then when it's finished, it goes, okay, hearts, right? Yeah. It goes, okay, I had 13 hearts and I had 13 clubs, I had 12 diamonds. And you don't even say I had no spades because the bucket's not even there, right? It doesn't even know that there is such a thing as a spade. Spade's a spade, right? But it doesn't know that the thing's there if it didn't see any, because it didn't make a bucket for it. Use a spade to make a bucket? No. Let's stop with those analogies. That joke's kind of worn thin. But but you understand, right? There's a different, like stream aggregate, you can, as you finish each group, you can spit out the row. But if we're just counting the whole set, that's only going to spit out one row, but it can't spit it out, obviously, until it's seen all of them, right? But yet we still see these going, yeah, dot, 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 moving along, because it's called, this has been called to initialize. We've called the get row on it, we just haven't had the answer come through yet. We have to wait for that to happen. Now, this is not an inefficient query. It's even gone parallel. That's nice. And in fact, let me quickly show you. It takes 3 seconds, and I'm going to switch to this one, and we're going to have a look to see what's in it while it's running. If I run that and then run this, look at this. I have multiple threads, right? But I can see my stream aggregates. I can see that my scans are producing rows. I can see that my stream aggregates are not at this point. This is interesting stuff, but it's a snapshot. At this moment in time, what did it look like? I'll come back to that in a few minutes because I think that that's tremendously useful because of this thing of what do you do with short-running queries. It's much better to say the most expensive query overall the day was this one that took, takes 6 milliseconds, and I've got it down to 2 milliseconds, and the load on the box has reduced significantly, right? That's way better than saying, yep, 8 minutes of the day is taken up with this massive query that consumes a ton of resources, but we run it only once a day at a time when nobody cares. That's one that you can nicely shout about, but honestly, nobody cares about that. The thing that they care about is the one that's running a lot, which is much harder to be able to use live query stats for. You're all impressed if I show you a query that sits there running for ages, and the more complex the query, the more you go ooh about it. If I had this and I said, also join to sales order header SOH on the sales order ID equals the sales order ID of that. And if I say I want to look at the production, if I want to look at the subcategory of the product, right? I could go on like this to produce the type of thing that, that a lot of you developers end up writing, where you have like 20 tables involved. And if I run this, oh, pretty. Right? And look, we could see at this point you can actually see some of the differences in the way that joins run because I can see I want to try and zoom in without, I can see that my merge join is happily pulling data in from both of these, but my hash match had to create the hash table, so I get a better understanding about what's happening. The way that my joins actually work is tremendously useful. If you're all developers, you probably have nasty queries, right? This is really useful stuff to be able to go, oh, look, we've got a bottleneck here. How are we going to solve that? Yeah, that's the next question, right? But the quick queries, I'll show you in a minute. Paul, you got another question? Can I record this?
Can I record it and then replay it back rather than running that query again and again and again? Is there like an estimator, or can I capture the profiler and then replay it again without actually running the query? Can I just record the command?
Did you all hear his question? His question was, can I record this? Sorry? What does he mean record it? Are you saying? Can you? Oh, okay. You could run like Camtasia, and you could record the video. No, that's not. That was Andy's suggestion. No. It's not a bad idea. No, but I'll show you how to. We'll come back to that as well. Right? We'll come back to that because I find it's fascinating. Hang on, quick question. Does anybody here read my blog? I would say have a monkey, but I no, wow, really? Very cool. You've read it before. You've read it in the past. Yeah. You're not a subscriber or anything like that. You don't read it regularly. Just going to sit in the corner. No, sorry, no. I get it. There's not many people that I regularly read their blogs. I subscribe to Chris Webb's blog because he's Chris Webb, and there's a few other people. And I subscribe to the blogs of friends of mine who are trying to get into blogging, so that I can critique. Is that the right word? So I can try and help them with their, to try to help them with their blogging experience. But there aren't many blogs that I go, oh, someone's written something, I need to go and read that. I tend to read the blogs that people I care about talk about. Do you know what I mean? If someone on my Twitter feed or Facebook friends will say, oh, I'm reading this, or someone says, oh, have you read this thing, then I'll go and read that. And there are people that I read more often than others, of course. There must be, by definition, right? He says, can you record it to be able to play it back later? No, but I'll show you how. It's not a built-in thing that you can do. There is no standard thing. The reason I asked about my blog is because I blogged about that. So Management Studio polls the DMV, and that's the clue, right, as to how to do it, right? Just bear in mind, I would be really reluctant to do it on production. Do it on your test environment, but we'll come back to that. So what can we learn? All kinds of things, right? I've shown you a bit about blocking operators, but I can show you some more as well. Join types, spools. Let's look at some of these. So for example, I looked at this thing down here with count big. If I actually say give me count star, right?